economy. The top story we're tracking at this hour, Ashneer Grover, former managing director of BharatPe, was denied permission by the Delhi police to travel to the United Kingdom later this month with his wife Madhuri Jain Grover. The denial comes amid an ongoing investigation into alleged financial misconduct by Ashneer Grover and his family. Now, in the last week of February, Grover and his wife requested permission to travel abroad as guest speakers at the London School of Economics and the University of Warwick from March 9th to 15th. However, the Economic Offences Wing investigating officer of the Delhi police rejected their request. The case pertains, remember, to a May 2022 investigation and an FIR against the Grovers by EOW, the Economic Offences Wing, for allegedly misappropriating funds. Now, back in November of 2023, the couple was once again stopped at Terminal 3 of the Delhi airport while preparing to travel to the US. They were notified of a lookout circular issued against them. Now, seeking to quash that lookout circular, the duo approached Delhi High Court. Last year, on 1st of February this year, court acknowledged that the investigation into the case registered by EOW is still in its very early nascent stage and scheduled the matter for hearing on 8th of May. But what we do know so far, that for the second consecutive time, Ashneer Grover and his wife have been denied permission to go abroad. My colleague Rakesh Khar joining us here with me. Rakesh, very good afternoon. It is a building story. Year on year, it appears that, Ashneer Grover is trying to move out. There is a lookout circular against him, barring him from travelling abroad. This is the second such time that he's been denied permission.
Good afternoon, Shweta. First and foremost, I think it's an unfortunate case for the entire startup ecosystem in this country. While it's for the law enforcement agencies and the courts to advocate on this, on the merits of the arguments on both sides, what is without any doubt that this has cast a rather ominous shadow on the startup scene in this country. Remember, India is the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, and we have an aspiration to reach the #1 slot. We already have about 1,15,000 registered startups in this country. To my mind, Shweta, what has happened is that this entire startup excitement with India leading the unicorn rage happened in around 21, 22. Post-COVID, this was one big, massive positive for India. And like any growth story, when you get into the growth zone, there is unfortunately a room for some slackness in the regulatory framework. The startup story, we started chasing these unicorn dreams,
right.
And to my mind, the entire ecosystem has now, it appears to be seen to be caught napping. And I have been pointing out that this unicorn quest, this number, it's ultimately a number, should not cloud the need for a basic hygiene in terms of corporate governance.
Okay.
And now it's not just this particular case. We are seeing cases after cases unwinding,
Absolutely.
and it's coming down like a pack of cards.
And just on the fact that it looks like the system has been caught napping, is finally catching up. The regulator is catching up. Many would say that it actually started with BharatPe, because that was the first case of corporate misgovernance that we saw unfolding, an EOW investigation into the alleged fraud pertaining to about 81 crore rupees that was siphoned off from BharatPe into other companies, and that is what the BharatPe case is all about. But there is a regulatory stronghold that we are once again looking at the moment.
No, so it was missing in the first place. Let's admit that. As I said, I spoke to Amitabh Kant, who was the champion for Startup India. As G20 Sherpa, I had taken up this issue with him, and he did talk about, he did grudgingly admit that there were lapses in the regulatory oversight, and that led to this excitement, and that excitement led to some fundamental issues, hygiene not being looked at. Now we are looking at compensation, we are looking at siphoning of funds, not just in one or two cases. These cases are rising, and once the probe enlarges itself, you will imagine that unfortunately there may be many more such cases which will come to light. And so the regulatory, the good thing about this case now is that it shines light on the need for regulation. Now again, you and I have been discussing along with other panelists that what should be the extent of regulation. Let's understand the entire process in this country. For startups, they are under the administrative ambit of the Commerce and Industry Ministry. So that's the enabling ministry. Now then there is RBI, there is Ministry of Corporate Affairs. When you look at the startup ecosystem, most of them, even as unicorns, were unlisted. So as it is, in both startup and non-startup ecosystem, the regulatory gauge on unlisted firms isn't that strong as it should be. And in case of startups, what happened is that there was no traction.
Absolutely.
And now RBI has got active. We know the Paytm case, and what comes to light clearly is that the startups who were doing well supposedly did not pay attention to even those basic queries, which began as queries, then became a probe from all relevant quarters. But now the good news is, Shweta, that under the Corporate Affairs Ministry, because once this spate of stories started coming about startups not doing well when it comes to corporate hygiene, I think the Ministry of Corporate Affairs got very active, the Finance Minister got active, and now we have something called the Company Law Committee.
Right.
This is CLC was essentially set up to try and improve ease of doing business. It's an advisory body. It just got an extension, so they have a term till September 24. It has been mandated now to do a full-fledged regulatory framework watch. It's like an audit of all unlisted startups in this country.
Much needed.
Much needed, much delayed, and they will present their report in the next couple of months. They already met once. They're supposed to do it by, say, I think April or May, and it's also expected that independent of this report, the Corporate Affairs Ministry might on their own bring in certain more pointers and reference points for all existing startups to reimagine their basic hygiene.
Right.
So that's where we are right now.
Are you of the view, Rakesh, therefore, that there should be at least one regulatory overview on startups per se, regardless of whichever space they are in? Because of
Shweta, the problem there is that, where will it reside? See, we work in a certain ministerial format.
Right.
The enabling ministry and the administrative ministry, as we call it, is the Commerce and Industry Ministry. Their role essentially is to create the fillip for startups to grow. And while as we are discussing these negative stories, let's not lose sight of the fact that there is a huge potential.
Absolutely.
And also simultaneously, many of these unicorns or many of these startups are also turning profitable. So the problem began with faulty balance sheets, no business case, replication of ideas or mimicking of ideas which might have done well in a certain geography in any part of the world or in India, and necessarily investors getting extremely excited. And the business model for the current startup system, not just one startup, in the macro sense is faulty.
Right.
Because there's an investor who sees a bright idea, there is a guy who has a bright idea, and the investor comes and his business case is that I will invest and at some point exit through the valuation game. So the valuation business model needs a complete re-examination, independent of the regulatory framework that needs to be set up. I wouldn't, Shweta, recommend an independent regulator for startups.
All right.
That will go against the spirit of growing them to their full potential.
All right, but
yes, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the CLC committee report needs to be not just, so to say, meet its timeline, but needs to be actioned upon in right earnestness. And what is happening today with 3 or 4 cases, let's not get into specific names, is the fact of the matter is that this is serving as a possibly a kind of a lesson for many other startups who have not kept their balance sheets clean.
All right, serving as a lesson for a fact there as far as the BharatPe case is concerned. Also, with what's happening in the startup ecosystem, there is a call for greater scrutiny. There is a call, of course, to understand that startups must go beyond valuation and profits to actually look at their bottom line and also protect consumers and their interest at large. That is a story we continue to track, and we will be tracking, of course, in the coming weeks as well.